Okay, today is Thursday, October 20th, 2016, and this is the Board of Selectmen's meeting. First up, we have an agenda item to discussion and possible vote on town administrator's contract. That has been postponed yet again to the next meeting. So we will have another executive session at 6:30 for our next Board of Selectmen's meeting. Up next is a town administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief update on the Devon's Regional Household Hazardous Waste Collection Center. As you may know, I sit on the Oversight Board and also am the chair of the Finance Subcommittee. And we just completed another successful fiscal year. We realized a surplus of approximately $4,000, which comes on the heels of a surplus of about $7,000, I believe it was the year before. So one of the key things that I wanted to note was that because we're meant to be a profit center, I suggested and it was agreed that we lower the cost of the users to get there. The assessments to the towns are remaining the same, but we have somewhat lowered the cost of the users. We have 12, I think it's 12 towns now. We just added a couple more, so it could be more, but looking at the usage, currently Bolton is number 4 in usage, so we are one of the heavier users, although we're a smaller town, so Bolton is really taking advantage of it. So congratulations to Bolton. We just added, the most recent additions were Stowe and Clinton to it. And Clinton, I believe, is the largest community that we've added so far. So no, it's going very, very well, and we're getting terrific feedback on it.
Can I ask a question about it?
Sure.
So you say the user fee, is that kind of, I've never been there, so is that one fee when you drive in, or like if you have a gallon of paint, there's a certain price?
It's one fee. There is different levels. Like if you have, the unit of measure is normally gallons.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a certain gallon range, it's, I think it was something like, I'm trying to remember, I think it was something like $4 a gallon, and then if you go up higher, but we reduced it by, I think it was 50 cents a gallon. So the average wait time is about 3 minutes, so people can get in and out of there very, very quickly. Just as an example, for people that may not be terribly familiar with it, the types of items that can be brought up there, sort of as an example. Batteries, both automotive and other lead acid batteries, rechargeable batteries, electronics, TVs, computers, monitors, appliances, fluorescent bulbs, latex paint, can be treated as regular trash after it's dried, mercury thermometers, printer ink and toner cartridges, thermostats. What not to bring are items that can be put in your regular trash, such as empty aerosol cans and containers, and that type of thing. So, as I said, overall, it's a very good facility. We have been building up the capital fund because at some point we're going to want to put a roof on the facility to protect certain things from the environment and so forth while they're out. But
what are the hours?
It's open once a month, open March to December, the first Wednesday of the month and the following Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. weather permitting. And I think we've only closed for weather twice since we opened, and I think it opened in 2011, no, 2010, I think, actually.
Do they take motor oil?
I believe they do. I believe we do.
You can drop motor oil off at the DPW barn to use as waste oil for the...
Here's the pricing right here, I'm sorry, it's just $7, currently $7 for each 2 gallon, or 2 pounds of whatever that you bring. And we did lower that, I believe, by 50 cents. I don't believe the new pricing is on there.
And who operates it? Collectively, or?
It's located in Devon's. We have one staff person who manages it when we're open. And we have another staff person who's part-time, obviously, who helps the customer, well, actually handles the loads for the customers. And then each town provides, it's rotating, but one town per month provides a volunteer. So we're there about once a year.
And is the revenue, do you see it growing?
The revenue, well, with the new towns coming in, we certainly see more income, but also we'll realize more expense for handling more. But with the way that we're
Because
structured,
of the weight of getting rid of it?
no, actually, the payments are getting rid of it pretty low. We work with Safe Harbor, and we've got a contract with them that I think we just, I think we go 2 years at a time with them. And they've been very, very cooperative as well. So it really has, it's exceeded my expectations. I was very hopeful for it, and it's actually turned out better than I hoped. So, no, as I said, people from Bolton are definitely using it.
And the annual fee to the town is what?
Oh, it's in the neighborhood of, it's in the DPW budget.
I can't remember.
Couple of $1,000, I can't remember off
It's
the
not
top of my head. We used to do it once every other year, and, yeah, for a lot more money, so people are getting definitely a better value for less money.
Great, thank
You have a question?
You know, I was just wanted to comment that one time a year, that fee, you're right, Don, that was more, the town of Bolton would be charged more in one day for that than what we ended up paying per year for this.
Yeah, so it definitely has gone quite well.
They even say Roundup and weed killer, insect,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Next, an update on the proposed special town meeting. I sent out an update email earlier today with the details of the content of the articles that we're looking at. You know, this was something that, as I said, I had mentioned in the past that seemed likely, and it's, excuse me, much more than likely now. It's something that we do need to have. Since it is limited, currently limited to the 4 articles, and I'm not anticipating any others, as we wouldn't normally do, for instance, zoning at a special town meeting, and there's nothing in the works that I'm aware of. Anyway, so we do have a calendar to hand out. As I said, the venue is available, the town moderator is available, and it's not unusual for us to have a town meeting, although we do it on an event-driven basis. There are towns that have one every year as planned as part of their budget process, but fortunately Bolton has never done that. So the department heads would be notified of the special town meeting November 4th. That's assuming that the selectmen vote to call the town meeting on November 3rd, which is our next meeting. Articles would be due in to me November 14th, and they would be forwarded to the town accountant. Also, that same day, articles would be submitted to the Board of Selectmen and Advisory Committee by me. Last day to have final articles in case anybody did propose any more, would also be November 14th. Citizens' petitions would need to be received by the date of the Selectmen's meeting, because that night the warrant would need to be voted and signed by the Selectmen. Then the next day we would get the warrant to the printer, and on November 23rd the warrant would be posted or published on November 23rd, which would fit into the required timeline, and then again the meeting would be held on December 12th. And the main driver for this is to deal with the payment of those 2 articles, the Emerson boiler and the water treatment facility. And as I said, we don't have firm numbers on that yet. We're looking at the area of $75,000 for the water treatment facility. But I spoke with Harold as recently this afternoon, and he was at the facility with with Whitewater, looking at it and trying to get its best understanding as to what we're looking at. So it'd probably end up being a little higher than $75,000, I would think probably the low 80s. Going back to the boiler, one piece of good news is that we still have a little over $8,000 outstanding on an old article for the engineering of the boiler project that never really took place from 3-4 years ago. So we could redirect, we could take the funds from that article and apply it to the boiler article if we're gonna pay for it with free cash. And,
Could we also go through and see if there's other,
oh, sure.
to check in and see?
We did a pretty good job scrubbing that in the spring,
know.
but we should always go back and check.
Yeah, there was
that.
a couple that were still asked to hold off,
Right.
so it's been 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So no, that actually, Ninochka and Donna and I were talking about that today.
What do you mean, looking for other?
Old articles that have some unexpended funds, but the purpose for the article no longer exists, so we could reprogram them back into another article. And then we have the unemployment settlement that's been discussed, that needs to be paid. The good news there is we've adjusted those figures downward a little bit this afternoon. It's a little over 25 rather than 28,000. And Article 4 for those wages, that has been adjusted up slightly this afternoon. Where again, these numbers are not final numbers. I'm just trying to give you an order of magnitude, but the 10.5 is looking like it's a little over 12 right now. But net, we picked up some ground this afternoon with looking at the boiler article. So the net expense is looking like it, for everything. We're hoping that we can get it down a little bit more. And again, you have the timeline here, so it's pretty straightforward. And as I said, special town meetings are always event-driven. We don't have one unless something pops up that was unforeseen at annual town meeting time. And in this case, the driver is the facilities issues that were discovered. But I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Is there an impact, does the lease, does that impact us at all?
No, the lease doesn't come into play. Because what the lease calls for is any capital expense under $10,000, the district pays for. Any expense over $10,000 is considered to be a capital expense that the town would pay for. So that's spelled out very clearly in the lease. I did think, and it's just a suggestion, but I did think you may want to have the superintendent in at the next meeting to do a facilities update. But that, again, that's up to you. The boiler, and I did say in the email too, but for anybody else, the boiler has already been installed and was up and running yesterday. So we picked a potential 80-degree day, I guess, to get it up and running, but everything seems to be running fine. We are going to need to do some balancing. Harold told me today that there are some things that really need to be done in there to work more efficiently that aren't happening right now. But that's a conversation for another day.
What do you mean balancing?
There are, and I don't claim to be an expert in this, but some of the connections just aren't, some of the connections need to be fixed. We have rooms there that are too hot, we have others that are too cold, and it just all depends on where you are. So, we have a very efficient boiler now, but we don't have very efficient infrastructure supporting it, so I think that's going to need to be addressed. Any other questions on that? And next, status on Camp Virginia. I've exchanged some communications with the head of the Girl Scouts in Massachusetts, the operations manager, and Ashley Davies, just to try to clarify a couple of things, because the person from the Girl Scouts met with the folks from the trust last week or 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to make sure that they understood that the Bolton Conservation Trust is a private 501c3 that is not a town entity. And while I'm sure they will be very supportive in the project, they can't make commitments on behalf of the town. That's the Board of Selectmen's role. And my office would be the main conduit for something like that. So, but that being said, she did confirm that they continue to be open to not having to have anything done by the end of the calendar year, which is why you don't see Camp Virginia on the special town meeting warrant. What they would like to see is to have the process wrapped up by, their strong preference would be wrapping it up by the end of by the fall of next year, because they run on the federal fiscal year. So they would like to see things concluded in October, thereabouts, which would mean that it would seem that we would still want to have an article on next year's annual town meeting warrant in May. And probably, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming that the town common will also be on the annual town meeting warrant. That's the last information that I've had, that will be requested to do that. So we could have both projects there at the time, but as far as Camp Virginia goes, this is something where we're starting to get people revved back up again for working on the open space plan. I discussed it with the new conservation agent this week, and people are starting to gather to talk about that again. That'll be key. We're going to have that ready for when the Sudbury Valley Conservation Trust does the submittal of the grant next July. So the way that it would appear to flow is we would have the annual town meeting vote in May, the grant submission is done in July, the awards are announced in September, and then whatever closing would need to be done after we have the grant award and we know and we know how what the payment structure is going to be, whether we've got the $400,000 from the grant or not. So it seems like, these things do change, but that's what it seems like we're looking at right now. The ad hoc group that Ken Troop has pulled together has already had 1 or 2 meetings. Ken sent me an update that he asked me to share with the board tonight. So an ad hoc group of 10 Bolton citizens has met twice to begin planning aimed at a potential purchase of Camp Virginia by the town. Since October 6th, the group has coordinated with the Girl Scouts and obtained a copy of the Girl Scouts appraisal of the property. Barbara Fortier, who is the lead person with the Girl Scouts, indicated they would be satisfied with the completion of the deal midway through their fiscal year 2018, which is April 2018, but their preference would be to do it in the fall. Those last words were mine, not Ken's, because I have had conversations with, or communications with Barbara. He's coordinated with Ashley Davies of the Sudbury Valley Trustees, who plans to attend the group's next meeting on November 1st. And Ashley indicates that the trustees have a budget for due diligence. So trustees have a budget for the soft costs, for the appraisal. We'll need an independent appraisal. I'm sure we'll need a survey, things like that, and closing costs. We'll be developing a timeline for the planning associated with the purchase and hope to share that with the selectmen shortly after the next meeting. They've indicated to the new conservation agent, Rebecca Longvall, that their willingness to assist the Conservation Commission in updating the open space plan. Group members plan to meet further with Rebecca and with Liz Luke Klaus, there's a typo here, to discuss in more detail. We'll draft a letter outlining progress in the town's interest that can be sent by the town to Barbara Fortier by November 18th to be provided to the Girl Scouts Board on November 21st. We'll be exploring alternatives for operations and maintenance of Camp Virginia, and we'll develop cost estimates for the continued operation, as well as explore and recommend funding alternatives. And for the time being, at least, the interested citizens suggest that they continue to function as an informal ad hoc committee, of course, reporting into the Board of Selectmen, providing periodic updates to the Selectmen. If at some point in the future an official town committee is needed, some members of the ad hoc group could be officially appointed. So their suggestion is right now is they work as an ad hoc group who will update the Board of Selectmen and obviously won't make any commitments or plans without the approval of the Board of Selectmen. So, is the board okay with that, or?
And just roughly now, is the asking price or the price they need, is that, did they give, do we have a firm number?
975,000.
975? And the rest of, like, what is the town, they end up,
We're hoping to get a grant of
Right.
400,000.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, right, 400,000 would be the max award in the land grant. And the expectation is that it will be a very competitive grant, and that we would, we hope to see the 400,000, but
excuse me,
as far as annual town meeting goes, you know, I'm sure we're going to have to budget the entire 975,000 in the article, because we can't anticipate getting the grant. I mean, and that's all assuming that this does go forward. I'm assuming it goes forward, but,
so I'm sorry to cut you off, but so if the grant came in, the town would be on the hook for 575 plus closing costs.
plus closing costs, et cetera. So-
Appraisals, whatever.
Right, so somewhere around $1 million. I mean,
600.
600,000, that's right.
And when are we getting kind of information about the town common? Has that come up before I joined the board?
We haven't gotten an update for some time, but I mean, I've had people, you know, stop in my office and I talk to them about what's going on, and the latest that I've heard is that the Bolton Conservation Trust is working towards annual spring town meeting, and will be requesting an article. We haven't had a formal request like that yet.
And what will this article comprise of?
I don't know. I don't want to misrepresent anything. I just know that they're, I think they're working towards trying to bring whatever their proposal is to the town for the May town meeting.
Does this involve money?
I don't know.
It'd be good to get it out in the open and try and schedule these things. You know, I just wonder about bringing both of them to the same town meeting.
Well, one of the points of view is, you know, people could be disturbed if they were given one project to vote on in the spring and then another project to vote on in the fall, if they don't understand that both are in the pipeline.
Yeah, no, let's get them out in the public and in the pipeline. I have no problem with that.
Randy?
Yeah, I'm disturbed about both of them. You know, you guys have, I know two of you guys have gone through last year's budget cycle, but, you know, knowing, you know, Dawn's letter out to department heads and what we're facing this year, and I feel as though I need to remind everyone that we're not, you know, free flowing here. You know, we are still in a very, you know, tight situation, and I put these two things in a nice to have category, and I think I heard on the Camp Virginia one, they're at least going to explore ongoing carrying costs.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Frayn's comment about 600,000, that's great, but we've got to get out of that mindset. We can't just be thinking about, oh, it costs 600 to buy it. It's, what is it going to do in terms of a tax on DPW for the next 100 years?
If that type of project comes forward, that's due diligence that we would need to do.
Yeah, and I didn't hear a thing about Town Square. And as far as I'm concerned, they need to keep the fundraising going. Because we're not in a position, I can only imagine, just Camp Virginia alone, you're talking 600 grand. We've got a lot of other things to be taken care of that, in my opinion, are in a critical or need to have.
And I want to make sure, I'm not saying that the Bolton Conservation Trust is going to be asking the town for money. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, all I know is that I believe their hope is to have an article on the town meeting warrant. Whether it includes any money from the town or not, I don't know, but the town would
But
need
it
to.
always will.
But the town would, well, my point is, the town will need to do its own due diligence if such a proposal comes forward on what the ongoing maintenance costs will be there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think the trust needs to figure this out pretty quickly. Because it was, my anticipation was is that there was gonna be no cost to the town other than if it was turned over, whatever the carrying cost would be from a maintenance and another perspective.
Yeah, so in my opinion, we still have, do we want to deal with that? Are we okay with it? What will taking that over do to DPW from a sense of cutting grass, plowing? You know, they put in a nice, Wi-Fi system where at some point that's obsolete, we need to deal with that. So it's great to go out and do all this stuff and lay that all out and then say, here, thank you, take care of it for the rest of your life. I mean, that's where we end up sinking our own ship, because we've got these costs that don't go away.
Okay, I think I've touched on all the high points for now. And again, I only mentioned the Bolton Conservation Trust since we were talking about likely Camp Virginia having an article on the warrant for town meeting, that it's entirely possible that we could be asked to put one on for the Conservation Trust as well, but I don't want to imply that I know any of the details of it, because I don't.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, that's all I have tonight.
All right, next up is Board of Selectmen business. We've already touched on the formation of the subcommittee for Camp Virginia, and Camp Troop's recommendation would be as sort of an ad hoc committee at this point in time. I think that's fine. What do we have to do if the two colleagues are in agreement with that, what do we need to do?
I would just memorialize the vote. Then if you want to revisit it at some point and make it a more formal committee, you certainly have the option to do that.
Sure.
But I think it gives them some formal direction and support.
You gentlemen okay with that?
So just approving the status of being an ad hoc committee?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Take a motion on that, if there's no other questions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the formation of an ad hoc committee to study the acquisition of Camp Virginia.
And I'd just like to ask a question. What's the difference between an ad hoc and a formal?
An ad hoc committee it's basically a loosely formed committee. They're not a public body. They don't have quorum issues. They don't hold regular meetings, open meetings. They will meet as needed. And they're just basically a working group to report back to the
They're not
selectmen.
subject to the open meeting
Not
law?
subject to the open meeting law.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up, one of you gentlemen put on a discussion regarding televised meetings of public interest.
Yeah, I put that on. So, what was the date? So it was September 27th. There were two items that came up at the Board of Health meeting. One was the Airbnb situation. I think it's on Kettle Hole Road. So I don't know if everyone's aware, but there's a homeowner who is putting his house, I think it's a he, putting his house up on Airbnb, and multiple people are renting it and having parties there. And so there have been cars parked all up and down Kettle Hole Road. Somebody's house got egged by the partiers. They're playing beer, ping pong, and things like that in the garage. So, pretty disruptive for a neighborhood. So anyway, that was on the Board of Health agenda that night, and the other issue was the new business at, what is it, 410 Main Street?
401.
401 Main Street. So it's, what's it called? It's
Cultivate Counseling Center.
Cultivate Counseling Center. So those were kind of two issues that were on social media a lot. I saw them on the Bolton Community Group on Facebook. and a lot of interest in following those issues. And I think that that interest was expressed, I think to Don, I think to members of the Board of Health, maybe to BATCO, members of BATCO, but it was not televised. And so, I asked to put this on. I just wonder if, things are working in terms of what we agreed to with the Board of Health, the broadcast policy.
I think one area that could be improved is, I spoke to Ken Troop about this, and he told me that BATCO was not aware of the meeting until the actual day of the meeting. And I think if someone is going to be having, if the Board of Health or ZBA, but I think we did televise the ZBA meeting, has something that by the agreement it would appear to need to be televised, that since we have a 48-hour posting requirement for the agendas, at the very least, BATCO could be given 48-hour notice of the request to, or whenever the meeting is posted. I mean, they're not always, we don't always wait to the last minute. Whenever the agenda is posted, then a request can be sent into BATCO, because as I understand it, when they did find out about the meeting, there was already there was a school, I think a school committee meeting was going on, and I know that we had our budget workshop that night, so Ken said, at the last minute, not even sure they could have had people available to broadcast it, so earlier notice, I think, would be certainly helpful to BATCO, and it may trigger something, when you're posting the agenda, oh, this is a meeting that we should be contacting BATCO about. I think that maybe that would be helpful, so just a thought.
So the notice goes up 48 hours, the agenda, and then BATCO needs how much time to kind of respond?
That I don't know, but Ken did indicate that, within 48 hours, they should be able to respond. But again, people normally put the agenda up earlier than, further out than 48 hours, normally about, 3 to 5 days. So that would certainly meet whatever requirements BATCO would have.
So I guess the issue is, maybe the Board of Health didn't think this was interesting to people, but, people were saying it was of interest, beforehand and after. So who's requesting that it gets recorded, and, is BATCO, is the Board of Health saying there's interest, please record us, or are citizens saying to BATCO, this, there are interesting things on here, I can't make it, can you record this?
I think it's two-pronged. Normally, you would look at the board in question to make the request to BATCO, but BATCO, as was discussed in a previous meeting, has the right to record any meeting. So if they did get a call from email, whatever, from some concerned citizen saying, hey, this meeting looks like it's pretty interesting, it would be great if you could record it, they certainly have the right to do that. And they can't be turned away. So the pull could come from BATCO, or, the pull could come from some private citizens, and then BATCO could respond to that, as well as the push, where the pull could come from the Board of Health, or whatever board as well.
Okay. So then we're telling the public, to look at the agenda 48 hours before, and if there's something on there and you can't attend the meeting, to, put a request in.
Well, I said normally the agendas would be posted further than 48 hours out, but yes, 48 hours is the requirement.
Well, I think we also need to be cognizant of the broadcast policy that we deliberated and voted on some time ago. So it doesn't, if you look at the 4 items that we did agree to, there isn't one on here that says if someone thinks that they'd be interested in wanting to see the meeting but can't attend, that they can make a request. So that's not specifically on here. So I think we also need to be cognizant of the policy that we had voted on, and, we now don't like the policy. Either change the policy or live with the policy.
Well, I think in number 2, it says hearings that involve more than the owner and direct abutters who are notified directly. I mean, I think that would, in these 2 instances, these hearings potentially, could involve, the building inspector, could involve the planning board, could involve the Economic Development Committee members, could involve the Board of Selectmen. We were all at that budget seminar, so we couldn't attend. So I think we have to look at number 2 a little bit more broadly.
Well, actually, who are notified directly means that they received a registered mail. That's what notified means. So, just because it's a meeting that might involve more than the owner and the direct abutters, I think they specifically included who are directly notified, which means, letters are sent out to the abutters, more than the owner and the direct abutters, that there is a meeting. And that's a different process than.
I think it says that hearings that involve more than the owner and direct abutters in Title V the direct abutters are notified by certified and registered.
As well as any variance. So there's 2 things. It's any variance to Title V, and if it's more than the owner and direct abutters who are notified, and it's notified by registered mail. That's what that means. So if we want to loosen it up, then we should loosen it up, but that's what that means, the being notified directly. So, I mean, it's more than just if there's an interest, so either we live with the policy or we change the policy.
So it's not hearings that involve more than the owner and direct abutters will be broadcast at Bolton Access Television's discretion. That's how I would read that.
I would too, because I think what drives the notification is the Title V.
No, we're notified as well as any variance.
Variances to Title V.
As well as.
Right, variances to Title V.
Yes, who are notified directly as well as any variance actions to Title V.
Right, so variances to Title V automatically are covered.
Oh, yeah, right, absolutely. Yes, they are. Or if there's any issue where the more than the owner and the abutters are notified directly by registered mail, independent of whether it's Title V. It's like a bogged down minutia. If we want to change the policy, let's change the policy.
And did we agree to a specific time frame on this?
I believe 6 months.
6 months.
My suggestion really was just to try to iron out some of the wrinkles that we may have with a new practice.
So they were saying, the Board of Health saying they were wanting to protect owners. So I don't know how we would change, to me, the commas are important. So
I think this is saying that if it involves more than because this arose because of routine Title V matters, that, is my opinion, is that interesting stuff, routine Title V? Not, personally, I don't think so, but so if it involves more than that fact pattern, more than Title V, then, because under the statute, only the owner and abutters have to be notified. So it involves more than that, and I would think the Airbnb thing is affecting the whole neighborhood.
yeah, and it's a town-wide issue, like, we need to follow this and consider it and think about the whole town. We can't just say on Kettle Hole Road, no Airbnb. Like, if we're gonna come up with some policy, it would be for the whole town. So it is important to track these situations that have much broader relevance. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's in number 2, but if there's some other way to say that, to make it more inclusive. The open
And
meeting.
what was the response of, has there been some type of formal response from the Board of Health? Well,
Scott Powell did send out an email that I believe.
I believe it's included in the package.
I saw that one. So what, if anything's before us on this?
I believe it was a discussion item that Jonathan asked to have added to the agenda.
So Jonathan, are you saying they're not in compliance with the agreement, basically, or?
It doesn't seem like, the wheels are meshing. So, the response from the Board of Health sounds like, it wasn't, they say it really didn't need to be covered. It wasn't there wasn't a substantial discussion. And that's, their take on it. So I just don't think we can rely on the Board of Health to know or to be keeping track of kind of how these issues are playing out in the larger community on social media, and, also what the schedules are of people who can or can't attend their meetings. So I think there needs to be something added to this that's a little broader, where people, can read the agenda and, contact Batco and say, I can't be there, and this issue is, very important.
I would be curious to know what the Board of Health, what is their reason for not complying? Why didn't they think Section 2 applied to this, at least the Airbnb thing?
Unfortunately, they're not really here yet.
Right, no, I get it, but
Yeah, I think if you read Scott Powell's,
Well, perhaps we need to have another session with the Board of Health, because I don't think we're gonna be able to solve anything tonight.
I agree. I think that we need their, why they think Section 2 didn't apply to that. Because it seems like it does.
Is that them in?
So we're going to invite them into the November 3rd meeting.
Sure. Okay. Done with that? Next up is execute the warrant for the 2016 state election on November 8th.
There are several copies there.
Any issues? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to execute the warrant.
I'd like to make a motion to execute the warrant for the 2016 state election on November 8th.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Is this the same?
Movies and minutes.
Oh, okay.
That's the next thing.
20th?
Yes.
Do we have minutes, John?
Yep. Okay, and then last up is we have minutes. We have regular session minutes from March 31st and April 28th, and executive session minutes from April 28th. I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks like. You and me, Tom. All right, if there's no other business, Selectmen's business, the next up on the agenda is an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Article 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the fire union, as the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position, and the board will not reconvene to open session. Oh, no, we do the motion first, then.
Okay, well,
Yeah, so, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, Linda?
Keith,
Yes.
Wasson, Frame,
Yes.
Thanks, Ken.